Okay, welcome to today's class. Today we're going to be talking about dimensioning and dimensions, and we're going to be discussing about the dimension style manager. So for today's class, we're going to be using this geometry, this object I created right here, and we're going to copy the dimensions of this. We're going to copy the dimension as shown on this other side. So they are both the same. There are any differences, it will just be slight differences. Well, I know they are both the same because they were created with the same dimensions. Okay, I'm just going to move this a little bit closer to the other one. Using the move tool. So it should just, no, don't go too close, please. I won't, I'll just keep it this way. Okay, now for me to get something right, which is this line, this dimension and this other dimension, for me to get it right, I need to create something which is a point to indicate the end point of this line. If this line were to come down, and that's also, that point should also indicate the end point of the second line if it should come down. So I have to create that just to make our dimensions good. But we can still work with it the way it is. But I just need to create that point to make it look neat as it is shown here. So now I'm going to go to the home tab, draw panel, and drop down this draw panel. And click on multiple points. After clicking on multiple points, I'll come back to my drawing and trace this endpoint and trace it to connect, to intersect with this other endpoint. And I will drop my point there. So we have it there. Now we have our points there. I can go out of that point command. So now let's start our dimensioning. Well, without dimensioning, of course, what we will have after creating our geometries will just be lines, circles, arcs, and just spaces. So dimension tool helps us to annotate and label drawings according to their length, distances, and arcs. So we're going to start immediately. If you can hear me and if you can see my screen, please use the chat box. Shola is out of this call. Please, if you can hear me, John Paul can hear me. Okay, Chinagorom can hear me. Shola, if you can hear me, please use the chat box, say yes. Okay, Asuko, if you can hear me, please use the chat box. Let's be sure we are all on the same page. It will be a very quick class. Okay, now let's go. So we know how we created this object. So we're just going to go ahead and do the dimensioning. For you to start dimensioning, there are two ways to actually access the dimension tool. If you're using any software later than AutoCAD 2015, there is a special dimension tool created for any type of dimension, and it's called the dimension. It's called dimension. So with this dimension tool, you don't need to select different types of dimension like we have here. Maybe you want a linear dimension, you want an aligned dimension, angular, and all that. With this dimension tool, you just do that with a click. So we just want to, you can select and it will give you the radius of the object. You can also select the line and it will give you the length of the line. You can also select these parts. It will give you an aligned measurement according to how you place it. Let's place it close. So this one gives you the difference between this point and this point. So if you want it aligned like so, you can just, oh, I need it to be aligned. Just go to aligned. It's like that. Okay. So we've seen it like that. The align tool is really giving me a challenge for now. I don't know why. So now let's get back to what we're supposed to do. That was just to explain the work of this dimension tool. So we're going to do some dimensioning. I'm going to be explaining how they work and how to use the dimension tools. So now, I'm just going to delete that. Okay. So we have a clear screen, not really a clear screen. Okay, so if you can hear me and if you can see my screen clearly, please use the chat box. Wow, somebody is having issues with our network. Okay. Okay, now let's get started. To start, I'm going to start by dimensioning this. I'm going to start by dimensioning this. And of course, it starts from a point, and that's why I created this point here. And it ends right here at the quadrant of that semicircle. So I'm going to pick the linear tool, and I'll start from this point. If you can't snap to this, operation, like, you did not miss anything, I'm just starting. You did not miss anything, I'm just starting. So what I said was that you can use this dimension to the dimension for all purpose dimensioning. You can use this for all purpose dimensioning because if you click on this tool and you move around the circle, we detect that that is a circle and it will give you the radius. Move around the line, it will detect that that is a line and it gives you the length. And you just click and drag to position wherever you want to position. And that is what the multi-purpose dimensioning command does. But we're not going to do that. I just want to explain what each of the commands tool does. What each of the commands will do. So I'm just going to click here. First of all, we have the linear dimensioning tool. So for the linear dimensioning tool, just click on it. And in this case, we're going to start from this endpoint and end at the quadrant of this semicircle. So remember, I created a point here, and that point is shown there because it's shown there whenever I move around it because I turned on the node snap. So if you're trying to do it and it's not coming on, just know that you have to go to your OSnap and turn up this node. If it is off and I move around it, you won't notice it. You won't notice the point there. It will just show you that it will just show you nearest. And if my nearest was to be turned off, which is this, it won't even show that there is any geometry there. So you just pass over it and that is it. But since the snap is turned on for node, whenever I hover around that point, whenever I hover around this point, you will see it snap to it, and that is it. So we're going to start dimensioning. Chizzy, you're welcome. You did not really miss anything. You can watch the video later to confirm what I just said. I'll just go to the linear measurements, click on it, and then, of course, the snap for node is turned on, so I can snap to that point I created by tracking this point and this other endpoint. Tracking this point and this endpoint gave me where I could place that point there. So having said that, I will just start here, click, and then click on my second point, and then drag to place my dimension line. Okay, having drawn this, I will really take some time to explain what these lines are and what they really mean. This is your first extension line. This is your second extension line. The horizontal member here, or in this case, the vertical member here, is your dimension line. And then, of course, this is just the dimension unit. Then this is one arrowhead and the other arrowhead. Okay, so I'll repeat myself. We have the first extension line because it is extended from the point where you chose as your dimension point. So first extension line, second extension line, dimension line, And we have the first arrowhead, second arrowhead, and of course the dimension unit. So if I click on this and decide to stretch my dimension in or change this point by stretching this part. Okay, I just click and drop that. You see it's not working. Try second part and you see it works. Because this is actually the point from which you chose the part where you'll be dropping your dimension. So you cannot edit from this first point. You only edit from the point where you chose to drop it. So if that is clear, if this is clear enough, please use the chat box. If this is clear enough, even cheesy, if it's clear enough, please use the chat box. Okay, John Paul, it's clear. Cheesy Amadi is clear. Yeah. Chinagorom, Omorshola, Namso are here on this call. Okay, it's clear. Omorshola, are you on this call? Okay, yes, you are. I don't understand. Okay, Namso is not clear, of course. I knew someone would have difficulty, so I will just explain. I will explain that again. Now, I'm creating this. So, flow with me. I want to start my dimension. I notice where I pick to drop my first point. When it says specify extension line or origin. So I click here as my extension line point 1. And I click the second part of my extension line. Second extension line, I click here. And I drag to place my dimension. Now, because I use this part as the first point of dropping my extension line, and this part as the second point of dropping my extension line, I cannot just drag this dimension from here. I'll have to drag it from the point where I dropped it. In this case, I'll drag here. As you can see, like so. I'll drag there. Now, for me to explain this thing further, I will draw a simple line. Let me just undo what I just did. Ctrl Z. I'll draw a line from point 1 to point 2. And to explain further, I will use this dimension tool. And I'll click on my first point, which is the first extension line. Second point, second extension line, and drag it and drop it here. Okay, so you can see the line is of 30.52. The unit of the line is 30.52. That is the length of the line, actually. So now, I'll highlight this and stretch the dimension line from this point. Because I created the dimension line by clicking this endpoint as my second extension line, I can actually edit it by just clicking on that extension line origin. Now, so is this clear enough? If it's clear enough, please use the chat box. John Paul, no, wow. By answering one question, I confuse another person. Okay. Okay, so now they switched places. So I'll start again. For John Paul's sake. I started here, I ended it here. And sometimes if you want to edit your dimension, let's say you just want to extend it. Yes, you just want to extend it, let's say drag it to a point and you want to start here. Sometimes it does not work. And why it does not work is because of where you created or where you chose as your base point to create. Okay, let me use the base point. I think you really understand the base point part. So it's because of where you chose as your base point. So you have to edit it from your base. And in this case, I'm going to click on this base point and drag this is the dimension line I'm dragging, not the actual line. So you see the line there, and I've extended it, but I could not do it from this point because that is not any base point from which I created this dimension. So John Paul, if you understand this part, please use the chat box. If you understand, say yes. Okay, so we're good now. I'm going to continue. Now, there are two ways to actually, there are two types of dimensioning. We have the dimensions that are associated with the object drawn, and we have the other dimensions that are not associated with the object drawn. I will explain. Please don't be confused. I will explain. Let's say we have this dimension here, and of course it's fully associated, and I do dim assoc. Okay, that is dim assoc, DIMASSOC, and I change the value from 2 to 0. 0, no, I change it from 2 to 1. Then I create a dimension here, same type, using same tool, and I drop. Now notice, just observe, I click on this line, and I try to stretch this line this way. You see the way the dimension was adjusted with the line. Me trying to adjust this line. If you're seeing this, please use the chat box, say same. If you're seeing this, okay, Marishala saw it. Okay. Okay, so you all saw it. Now I'm going to stretch the line, not the dimension line this time. I'm going to stretch this line. The line I created, the line that I dimensioned, not the particular dimension line. I'm just going to stretch this line, and you observe what happens here. Sorry, I'm just going to click that. Control Z, and just click this. Come here, click on this line, and drag it. Of course, now you see that the dimension stayed there while I stretched the line. This was because I turned off the associative feature of this dimension, while this other one was on while I created this dimension. If you don't understand, please say no. If you understand, say yes. Okay, John Paul understands. Who else? Who else understands this? Wow, everybody understands. Oh my God. Me, I did not understand. So I will repeat it because I did not understand. So what I did was, okay, like I said, you can create two types of dimensions, just like we have in arrays where some of them are associated and some of them are not associated. So you can create a dimension that is associated with the particular object created. So in this case, I created an object and I associated the dimension with that object by using the dimassoc command, D-I-M-A-S-S-O-C. Yes, this dimassoc command, if you use 1, it means that you're reducing the associative feature of that dimension. So it will not be associated with the object. Now, if you use 2, it means that it is fully associated. In this case, I use 2 and I use enter. It means that it is fully associated. Now, any line I create, and let's say I dimension this line all over again. Let's say I dimension this line all over again, and I use this. I come over here, dimension this line all over again, from this point down to this point, and I say this. And I try to stretch this line. You see that dimension is stretching with it. Yes, that is it. So if I turn it off, if I turn that dimassoc off, no, if I reduce it to 1, not turning it off, if I reduce it to 1, like this, I'm creating a new line, and I do demasor and make it 1. And I come down to my dimensioning tool for linear dimension and start here, end here, create this. Okay, and that's. I made a mistake there. I did not dimension from the endpoints. Like here. So click on this, start all over again. From this endpoint to this other endpoint, and click to drop. Just click anywhere around here to drop it. Now, if I stretch this line, you see the dimension line is not stretched with it. So I believe you understood all this because yes, all of us said yes, we understand. Okay, so if you understand this particular part I just did, please use the chat box, okay? Everyone understands this part. Now there's another one where you can actually edit all the elements of your dimension. So you can see the dimension is still associated in itself, but not associated with the object. Now, the third one is when you set dim as sub to 0. If you're setting dim as sub to 0, it means that you want all these elements to be segregated like they are being exploded. So you see them to become single elements of each other. So now I'll do dim as sub. And I'll make it 0 in this case. Then I'll click on my dimension line for linear dimensions. I'll come down here, create my first dimension extension line, and the second one, then click to drop. Made a mistake there, something happened. I don't know why it did not drop. So I'm going to do it again. First point. Something is happening. I don't know. First point, second point, and then drop. Okay. And now you see it there. Now, if you notice here, if I try to select this line, you see it's segregated. And this one, they are all separated, not connected to each other. And the text is also on its own. So they are all on their own. Everyone is fending for themselves accordingly to your tent, O Israel, right? So that is it with the 0. If you input 0, it will just deassociate everything, both what is on dimension, the elements of the dimension. So you see this one, they are all associated, but not associated with the line. And you see this one is associated with the line, but this other one, the one I just created, is not associated with any of its elements. They are all like, we just created some lines and then fixed arrowheads, and then we inserted text, and then we created this dimension. So if you understand this, please use the chat box, say yes. Okay, she is on point. Nam is on point. Chinagum is on point. John Paul is on point. Okay, so now we'll continue. Having said this, let's go over to dimension and let's dimension our object. So now I'm going to turn dim as sub on and put it 2, so it will be fully associated. Now I'll come back to my work, start dimensioning. Like I said, you can use this dimension to just to dimension everything. You can use it to dimension everything, but I will just go over here so I can explain what all these do. In this case, I've done the linear dimension, which is this one. And of course, I will use the linear dimension again here, where I'll pick this node point, come over here, pick this endpoint, and then it gives us that 14. That is the length of that full line. Okay. So now dimension this line. I'll just on linear dimension also pick this point and this point. To get that, I'll repeat the dimension command again to get this point. It equals 3. Okay. I'll pick again. Okay, yeah. So now I'll go over here, pick this point and this endpoint. We have 4. So now to dimension this aligned path, we need to use the align dimension tool. Click on this first point, click on the second point, and then we have it there. So we now have the measurement of that point, which was unknown. See, here the measurement is unknown, so now we have it known. Now we need to get the angle of this from here to here. How do I do that? I come over to this part. For angular measurements, I select this one, and it's asking to select arc, circle, or line. Now I'll select my first line, and it's asking to select second line. I'll select the second line, and like so, it gives me the dimension of that line. So I can decide to keep it this way, or bring it upward and keep it this way, like this. But this one won't be really nice. Of course, you can see. We just need this other dimension, like so. So I will drop it here. Now the next one is to get the dimension of this, the length of this line. So I come for linear. I'll pick this point and the second point, and up I go 2.4. Yes, correct. Now we'll go for the next one, which is arc length. I want to know the length of this arc. I just come and click on the arc, and then drop it over here. Because you can see the indication here showing that this is the length of this arc. From this point to this point, this is the length of the arc. So that's not enough. I need to also know the radius of that arc. And I come also to use this angular measurement. No, that is not what I'll use this dimension to actually, or this radius to, any of them will work. So let me use this radius tool. And I pick any point here to know the radius of this particular arc. I can drop it right here. It's telling you that, okay, this arc starts from the center of this other inner circle, and the radius is equals to 3. So now we'll go over to the radius of this inner circle, and of course, the radius dimensioning to also work. And I'll pick this inner circle, and I'll drop it right here. Be this way. Okay. So to be like this, and then we need some other dimensioning. Arc radius. It's the same thing I did with the circle. I just clicked on this tool and selected the arc and directed it where I want it to be. And that is it. If you understand, please use yes. Okay, so now we need to know the length or the diameter of this, and that's, you can also get that with this. No, you won't be using this actually. You'll be using the linear tool because it's not really a circle. So I click on this point and then this other endpoint, then drag to drop, which is not correct. This endpoint, second endpoint, and drag to drop. Okay, so we have it like so. And what else? Well, that is it. But there are other two dimension tools that we need to explain. Of course, you know what this diameter will do now. To give you the diameter of a circle or an arc, like so. Because it's 1.6, the diameter will be 3.2. Like that, but I don't want that crowd the whole place. So now we have that, and we have it all dimension, but there are other two dimension tools that we need. So for those two dimension tools, I'm going to copy out this geometry. How do I do that? First of all, remember we did not create a layer for this, so we cannot turn that off. I just remember that I did not create any layer for that. And that is one of the disadvantages of not creating a layer before doing your job. And I'm going to take these lines, just going to pick them one by one. That is the work I will need to put myself through because I did not use proper drawing management. And this, and this, right here. And this one, and this one is also this, with this circle, of course. Okay, so we have them all selected. I'm just going to copy and I pick my base points anywhere and copy it out. Now for this illustration, I'm going to move our origin, which is this CS icon. And to do that, I'll just zoom out a little bit. Go to view. And this, I don't even need that for now. Let's see this. Let's just select this. Where can I see UCS? Okay. I just selected that. And I'll turn off orthogonal restrictions so I can move it where I want. And I want it to be around here. So, keep it straight also. F8, keep it straight. Okay. And that is it. So we have our UCS icon there. Now, to explain what this other one does, navigation bar off, please. Yes. You cannot mark everything at once because you have dimensions there, and because you did not create a folder for a layer actually for your drawing objects and for the dimensioning, you cannot actually freeze or lock the object while copying the rest. As you hope I answered your question. Let me quickly create layers for the object and for the dimensioning to explain what I just answered as well. So now I'll just create a layer for dimension. I'll call it dim. Create another layer for object. I'll call it geo, as in geometry. So we have that. Let me see if I can select all dimensions and put them in the dim folder. Sorry, the dim layer. Select similar. Okay. Put them in dim. That's for the radius dimension. I'll also select this. Select similar. All right, click and do select similar. So it will give me all linear dimensions, and I'll put them into the dim layer. Also, I go here. I go here, select this one. Do select similar. Of course, that's the only one we have there, but to be very sure. Select similar. And I'm just going to move it to the dim layer for aligned cases. I'll select this. Select similar. And I'm going to move it to dim. So now let me just turn the dim off. The dim is the current layer. I want to turn that off. And I will make another one the current layer, which is layer 0. I'll make layer 0 the current layer. So I can turn the dim off. The length and arc, I did that already. Okay, the arc length, yes, I've not done that. Thank you. I will need to do that. I'll need to do the arc length. So let me move the arc length. Select similar. And over to dim. Now, come there and turn off this. Just turn it off. So you see, the dimensions are out. Why is this one still there? Move it also to the off the dimension layer. I need to give us this. Because one or more object has been moved to a frozen or turned off layer. I'll close it. Of course, that because the layer was turned off before I moved it in. So now you can see we have geometry out, like so. So that's one way to explain how important it is to have a good drawing management. It's very important to have a good drawing management, and you've seen one of the importance of it. Okay, now we continue. I wanted to talk about the ordinates and I want to talk about the jog and ordinates. Yeah. So for the jog dimension, okay, we'll talk about ordinates first. Well, ordinates creates a dimension and it takes a datum point as reference. In this case, our origin will be our datum. And if I select the future location, which is this point, and I drag it down, it will give us the location of this point with respect to the x-axis using the origin as datum. So it will tell us the location of this particular point from the datum. Do you understand this? If you understand this, please say yes. If you don't, I can explain again. Wow. No, wow, I was expecting that. Okay, I will. What I meant to say is that we all know how coordinate system works. We know the X and Y coordinates, right? If you understand X and Y coordinates, please use the chat box, say yes. I will. If you understand X and Y coordinates, please use the chat box, say yes. Okay, so now let's assume this circle was not here. I want to use the center of this arc. We want to get the coordinate of the center of this arc to be displayed on the screen. We want to get the coordinates of the center of this arc to be displayed on the screen so everybody can see it. Now, you know, the coordinate takes their origin from the origin of this particular drawing, which in this case is this point. This point, right? So this the meeting point between this vertical and horizontal line. So now we're going to create a dimension that will actually display the coordinates of the center of this arc with respect to the datum, in this case, this origin. Now I'm going to use ordinates. That's the dimension tool that will actually create the X and Y coordinates with respect to a datum. Now, in this case, it's asking me to select feature location. That means the point I want to mark. The feature location here is talking about where is the point you want to mark. And this is the point I want to mark. This is the point I want to get both the X and Y coordinates. So now I click on this point, and it's asking me to specify letter endpoint. The letter endpoint will determine if it will show me the x-axis, the coordinate according to the x-axis, or the coordinate according to the y-axis. So first of all, let's go to the y-axis now. It is telling you that the height from the origin to this particular point, which is this point, the y coordinates of these points here, the feature location, the y coordinate of the feature location is equal to 6.35. If you understand this, please use the chat box. Say yes. If you don't understand, I don't mind. We can go over this all day if the host will permit us. Of course, I know it. Okay, you understand this. Now, how many people understand this, please? Chinagorom, John Paul, Chinagorom, Cheesy. Okay. Any other person? Okay, as people understand this with a Z, that means talking about the Z axis. No, it's not for the X axis, it's for the Y axis. It is showing you the heights. Of course, you see the level there, it's showing you levels, right? It's showing you levels. So you see the level there, it's showing you the height of this. Do you understand? Okay, I will explain again. I will explain again. I believe you have not really gotten it. So let me explain again. If I click on ordinates, and I want to get the X and Y axis of this particular point displaying on the screen. Yes, I want to get the X and Y of this point displaying on the screen. If I click the feature location, which is this point, and I drag it down, what I'm trying to tell the software is that I want to display the X axis. If I drag it down, it means that I want to display the X axis for me. But if I keep it like this, drag it towards the left, it means that I want you to display the Y axis. Do you understand? If you understand, please use the chat box. Omorishola, if you understand this, please use the chat box. If I keep it vertical, it means I want it to display the X axis. If I keep it horizontal, it means I want to display the coordinates of the Y axis. If you understand, please use the chat box. Omorishola. Is she on this call? Okay, I think she's not on this call currently, or maybe she's having network issues. So I believe you all understand what I just did. If you understand what I just did, please use the chat box. Say yes, yes, yes. Okay, John Paul does. Who else? Chizi Amadi, Shinagom, of course. Namso. Namonso. Okay. I believe I'm getting your name correctly for the first time. Okay, so I think you have any issues with the network. So I'll just continue. That is it for the ordinate dimensioning tool. Okay, you do understand. Okay, now also understand. So the next one would be jogged. Now, this jog coordinate is no different from the normal coordinate system, but just that there are some times where you would want to create, sorry, not jog coordinates, jog dimension is not different from the normal dimensioning system, but there are times where you want to create a dimension, but you need, okay, let me do this. I'll create this radius. I need to get the radius of this, and I'll keep it like so. And okay, I get to the job. That's me to select arc, like where I want to create the jog dimension, as in the object I need to create the jog dimension with. So now this is the object. I'll select this arc. And now it's telling me to specify center location. Now this center location won't be this original center. It can be anywhere on the screen I want to start from. Let's say I want to just keep it here. And that is it. So now it's telling me to specify dimension line location. Dimension line location should be somewhere around here. Okay. Now jog location. I'm keeping the jog location here. Okay, it's not really nice. It's not looking nice. So I will do that. But what I'm trying to explain is that I can get the same dimension. In this case, the radius is 3. And of course, you see here, the radius is 3. But I started it from another location. Let's say I had too many dimension lines around here, and I don't want to cluster this area. I just want it to display those geometry nicely. Or let me just do it this way. I'll delete this. And I have something like, let me delete all this also. We already know what that does. And I had something like this here. And I had something like this, maybe some geometries I don't want missing out from details whenever I'm displaying my drawing to maybe anybody I want to display it to. I had all these things on, and I don't want to use the normal, what is it called, reduce dimensioning, because if I try to use it, it will in some case, let's say this is where I want to drop it, it will in some case, cluster this area, and I don't want it to be like this. That is where the jog dimensioning tool comes in, because now you can decide where you want to use as your center point, but you know that this is not the real center point. The real center point is somewhere, and to give you the perfect radius of that object. So in this case, I'll select this as the object. And then now it's telling me to specify center location override. What this is trying to tell you that, okay, you don't want to place it at the actual center of this object. Where do you want to place it? In this case, I want it to be placed somewhere around here. I'll just place it here. Now it will act as a center. It's not really acting as a center. It will act as an escape, yes, from the real center. So now I want it to give me the radius of this. It's telling me to, okay, specify dimension location. I want the dimension to be located here. And then the jog line location should be somewhere around here. Like so. So now it's telling you that this arc is equal to radius 3. But because there are a lot of objects here, I want this arc to start here. That is the reason why they use jog arcs at some point. Please, if you understand this, use the chat box, say yes. If you don't, I don't mind repeating myself. Okay. Okay, we have no, okay, we have a no, we have another yes. Of course, one no is enough to explain it again. So now, cheesy. Let's assume we have enough object or geometry here, and this place is a little bit clustered with all dimensions, and so we have radius. I'll select this and place a radius here. I'll repeat radius. I'll select this and place another radius here. Repeat radius. I'll select this, place another radius here. Let's say we have all this. And I want to get the radius of this arc. And let me see. I have something like this here. Let's say I have an angular measurement here. My first line, sorry. First line, second line. And I have an angular measurement here, like so. Let's just keep it so. Okay. We have a cluster in a scenario where we have a cluster drawing, and we want to create another dimension to show the arc, the length or the radius of this arc. In this case, we can come here and use the jog dimension tool. So now once you select on the jog dimension tool, you have to select the object, of course, in this case, a sector. And then it's asking you to specify center location override. This center location override is trying to tell you, okay, since you don't want to place the center here, because if I place the center here, of course, it will be from this particular center. I don't want it to be placed there. I want the center to be placed in another location, but we all know that it is related to this particular center. So I need the center to be somewhere around here. And it's asking me, okay, specify dimension line location. Of course, we all know what the dimension line is. And in this case, I want my dimension line to be here. Okay. And now, asking me to specify jog location. I can say, okay, my jog location will be somewhere around here, but that would make it too clustered. Let me take it out of this drawing. Create something like this. 1, 2, 3. Mirror it. Okay. Keep source objects. No. Erase source object rather. No. Okay, let me do this. Why is my system slowing down? Arc length. We have now we want to create the radius of this arc. We want to show the radius of this arc, and we already have something here. So with this in view, we can actually use the jog dimension tool. Now we come here, we have to select the object, of course, which in this case is this object. Now we need to specify location, center location override. So now I will just choose anywhere here to be my center location override. And the next thing it will be asking you, specify radius, dimension line location. Now in this case, I'll just click here to set my dimension line. And the next thing will be location of your jog. Specify jog location. The jog is simply that zigzag line. So I'll place it somewhere around here. And we have that. Because I don't want it to show, to place it at the center of this arc. Because if I place it at the center of this arc, it will make this whole place look clustered. Already, it's already clustered for me. If you ask me, it's already clustered. I don't want it to be displayed here, so to cluster this whole environment, or let's say I had other geometries here that I want to be showing clearly, and then I need to show the radius of this arc. So that's where this jog dimensioning comes in. If you understand this, jump on, choose it rather. If you understand this, please use the chat box. Okay. So we're cleared out with that. Now we can continue to the next part of today. If you notice that if you look clearly, you notice that some of these dimensions are just too big for what they are doing. Especially this one right here is just too big, and this one right here, I think it's just too big. And that's where we need to manage our dimensions. How do you manage your dimensions? Simply by using your dimension style manager. With your dimension style manager, you can change the color, you can change the arrow type, the arrowhead type, you can change so many other features like the text and the size of your dimensions and all that. But before we go to our dimension style manager, I will need to create something and explain some other types of dimensioning that I did not explain now. And for that, I'll go to the Annotate tab. And we have these two, continue and baseline. So now, for me to explain that, I'll need to draw some series of lines. Okay, to restrict it orthogonally. I'll do this way. Come down. Down. Right here, right here. Right. And close. Okay, now let's explain some things. Now we have two other types of dimensioning that I have not covered. And we have the continue and the baseline dimensioning too. Now, for you to use any of these two, you actually need to start a dimension. And that's where the linear dimension comes in. Of course, I talked about linear dimension, or you can just use this dimension too. So I'll just use the linear dimension. I'll create my first dimension by selecting the first extension line point and the second extension line point. And we have it like so. Now, after doing this, if you want to continue dimensioning these other parts, you can just simply use the continue dimension. So it will pick up from the last point drawn. If you understand what I just said, please use the chat box, say yes. This dimension too picks up from the last point drawn. If you understand this, okay, John Paul does. Cheese does. Okay. Okay. So now, After drawing your first dimension, you just click on continue to pick up from that last point, and then we just drop them, and it continues like that, just like the name. So we have it. Once you're okay and you're fine with what you're doing, you can just enter to go off the command. Of course, it's asking you to continue again. So if I click on this line, it will pick up from that point and continue like so, like so, like so, till you get tired. And if it's still showing this box, just escape to go off the command. And that is it. If you understand this, if you understand using this continue dimension tool, please use the chat box. Okay, jump on this. Jump on. So, okay. Cheesy, of course. Jump on like 3 times. Okay, so now we can continue. The next one there is the baseline. Of course, like the name goes. It creates, let me mirror this. I need to mirror this object. Only the object, not the dimensions. Mirror on the wall. And I'll pick this as my center line and drag to drop. Say no because I don't want to erase the other part. So now we continue. I go with my dimension tool for linear dimensioning. Yeah. And I pick my first point. No, this should be my first point. And it will serve as the base point. And I drop it like so up here. Let me just drop it up. I will explain why. And then I go to my base point. Excuse me. I'll go back. I'll drop it down, not up. And we will edit it. So I pick this point. And my second point, and I drop it right here. Okay, so now I go to the Annotate tab and run down to where we have baseline dimensioning. Of course, it picks up from the previous part. And then I want to dimension this line. So I need this one. I go to the next one, which is this line, this point here. I click, which is the point here. And I click. Yes, I decided to do it that way so you see what it does. I escape to go off that command. Now, you see, it's really not aligned properly, but the baseline started from the first one, and then it continued to the next point, which is this point, giving you the length from the very origin as the baseline to that point. And the third one also continued like so from the baseline, which is this point, and this other, the next point. Then the fourth one, as you can see, started from the baseline, and then it's giving the length from the baseline to this point. If you understand this, please use the chat box, say yes. If you don't, I don't mind, I can repeat myself. That's that, and of course this. Okay. So you just saw what I did. I used grip editing mode to actually edit my dimensioning. If you were in the class where I was talking about the grip editing, please type grip. If you were in class or you were on that Zoom session, please type grip while we continue, and I will explain what I just did. Of course, you were there. Only cheesy. Wow. Okay. John Paul, you were there. Okay. Okay. And I will explain what just happened. Just like all other objects in AutoCAD, I'll copy this out. I'll just copy this object out. Just like all other objects in AutoCAD, you can also edit dimensions using all these grip points. Yes, like I told you before, you can edit with this, you can edit the shape and all that. But with the center rectangle grip, you can actually stretch and stretch with the center grip. And it is the same for the dimension lines and all. It is the same for the dimension line. So if I highlight any dimension and try to drag this upwards, as you can see like so, you can edit the height of that dimension. So this one is for editing of the height. And this one, of course, I talked about this one earlier. So editing to the x-axis, which is the width or the length. Okay, so we have that. And if you want to edit the positioning of the text also, you can click on it. After clicking on it, you can just click on this node or that grip and drag it wherever you want. Turn off orthogonal restrictions so you can freely drop it where you want. Now, if you move around it, you will see some options. Now, with these options, you can actually edit the dimension. Let's say, for instance, you just want to stretch it. You can stretch it wherever you want and drop it like so. The next one is move with dimension line. You're moving it to the dimension line. The next one is move text only. If you want to move the text only, you can move only the text and drop like so. The next one is move with leader. This one will create a leader for you, not the leaders of tomorrow. To create a leader for you. So you click on it to create a leader, directing you to where that text is coming from. Okay, so we have like so. You can see the leader. Of course, you must have noticed it's not the leader. It's not the leader of tomorrow. Okay, now the next one. Let's go to the next one. Move around this and don't click yet. Just move around it, and it will bring up this menu. And then you see center line above dimension line, and you can drop it above dimension line. You can decide to drop it center vertically, like so. You can decide to drop it or reset text position. And it will go back to its default. Please, if you understand what I just did, rather, if you understand what I just did, please use the chat box. Did, not do. Okay. No, she never. Okay. Okay, that's all. So I'll need to explain myself again so Chinago will really get me. Chinago, you want to type in the parts where you missed, the parts you missed out, so I can easily direct my answers to you. Chinago, you would want to.
I went offline when we started this particular one.
Like the grip editing of dimensions.
Yes.
Okay, I will explain that shortly, please. Okay, so what I was saying is that just like we have in objects where you can use the grips to adjust or edit objects like you're seeing here, you can also use the grips in your dimensioning to edit positions of your dimension or the dimension text or maybe add a leader. So in this case, I want to edit the position of this text. I can just move around this text. I need to bring up this menu. And I can decide to move only the text and move it just where I want it, like so. I can decide to say, okay, I don't want this text to move out just like that without directing somebody to where it's coming from. So I can just move text and create a leader just by selecting move with leader. So I'll move it with leader and drop it somewhere here. So the leader will tell the person that, okay, this text is actually from this dimension line. Chinagorom, if you understand this, please use the chat box. If you understand this part, please use the chat box. Okay, about the leader is directing the person to where the dimension text is coming from. Now the next one there, of course, the stretch is same thing as the move, but the stretch will actually move both the text and the dimension line. Let me explain it with this one. So I go stretch, let's stretch it downwards. So you see the stretch is moving both the text and dimension line. So now the next one is move with dimension line, of course, we all know what that does. Move text with leader, we've seen that only. Move text only, we've seen that. Move above dimension line, if I click on this, see it goes above the dimension line. But since they are all associated, it will move everything. I did something, I'm going to undo that. Since it's associated, it will move everything. Now let's go to the next one, which is to align vertically to the center. Now, where is this one? Where is this one? Where is this one? Vertical center. I'll need to do, no, let me use this other one. Move around this text. Center vertical. Because you see, it is now at this point. From this point, it is aligned with this vertically. So you're seeing that it does not go above this dimension line. Now let's go check the next one, which is reset text position. If I'm resetting this text position, it means I want to be at the original position, like so. If you understand this, Chinagon, please use the chat box, say yes. If you understand this, Chinagon, oh, okay. So we're good with that. And that is it for this script editing. Now, I wanted to talk about Dimension Style Manager before we start doing this group editing. I believe we have a little time to talk about that. So for that, I'm going to take off this because I don't need them. Delete, come here, delete these also. And I'll delete this because I don't need it. This one, let me use UCS. UCS icon. And I want it to be at the origin. It's the origin, of course. UCS icon. I'll turn it off. I want to be seeing it. And in this case, I will go and turn on a dim folder. Remember this folder, sorry, layer. Remember this layer. And now I want to manage this drawing. I want to put in some styles that will make it look nice. Now, if you look at the object, you see that some of them are just too big. And the first place you would want to go to do that is your Dimension Style Manager. How do you go to your Dimension Style Manager? There are two ways, or there are multiple ways, but there are basically two ways to reach out there fast. And the first fast way is to go to Annotate tab and drop down this to bring up your Dimension Style Manager. That is the first fast way. And the second fast way is just by typing dim style and then hit enter on your keyboard. Because it will bring up the same dialog box. You can see different styles. We have the ISO 25 and then the standard. So if you want, you can create your own style by clicking on new. This set current will actually set, after you've done your settings and all that, you need to click on set current if you want it to be set to be activated on the drawings. So you need to click on set current after setting or modifying the settings. So in this case, you want to create a new drawing style. You can just click on new. When you click on new, you just give it a name. In this case, it's copy of this. And if you want it to start with settings from your previous drawing style, you can just use start with and start with any of these ones. But if you don't want, you just leave it like that and then edit it the way you want. Or you need to start with something. Then annotate if you want it to be annotated, that is they can edit and all that. You click on this. So now the next one is used for all dimensions. Of course, you want to use it for all dimensions and not just linear. Of course, you may want to set it to be just for maybe reduced dimension. So this particular style is dedicated just for whenever I'm setting, displaying dimensions that relate with the radius of a particular drawing, or you want it to be angular, you want it to be linear and all that, you can decide it from this box. So once you're done with all your settings, you click continue. In this case, I will go cancel because I don't want any of that. I don't want to create a new style. I just want to modify an existing style. Mind you, remember, if you modify this style, it will only be related to this particular drawing, which is dim in this case. It will not go outside of this drawing. So anytime you're creating a new drawing, you need to set your style for that drawing. Do you understand this? Please, if you understand, please use the chat box. If you understand what I just said about the drawing management and creating a new document, if you understand it, okay, now we continue. To edit this, we need to go to modify. We'll get a lot of options to actually modify this. So we have it here, starting with the line. You can see dimension lines. You can see dimension lines. So the dimension lines, of course, in this case, it's this horizontal line. In this case, it's this aligned line. So you can decide to change the color of the dimension line. It's currently by block, or you can set it to be by layer, or you set it to be red, green, blue, and all that. You can see the dimension lines. They've changed their colors. So go by layer because you're going to set that with your layers. And the next one is the line type of the dimension line. You also want to set that to by layer because you will use your layer to actually edit the properties of that line. And the next one is line weight. How you want your line weight to be. I'll also keep it by layer because with the layer, of course, just one click and you've edited all of them. Then extend beyond ticks. This one is extending your dimension line beyond this tick. The tick is this particular point. So if you want to extend it up to that, you can do that. No. Okay, it's grayed out. That means you cannot edit that for now. The next one is baseline spacing. The baseline is talking about that particular point. In this case, the points where you drop your dimension, like this point here. So this is the baseline spacing. And the next one is suppress dimension line 1. If you want to suppress your dimension lines, of course, these are your dimension lines, this one and this one. Sorry, this horizontal line here and this horizontal line, that's your dimension line. So if you want to suppress it, and decide to suppress dimension line 1 or dimension line 2, like so. So I don't want to suppress any of them. I keep that. So now the next one is extension lines. The next one is your extension lines. For your extension lines, we're talking about these vertical members, this one and this one. In this case, this line and this line. That is it for the dimension, the extension line rather. This line and this line. Now for your extension line, you can decide to choose which color you want for your extension lines. Let's say green. But we're not doing that, so we just keep it by layer. Because we're going to edit it from the layer. Line type, extension line 1, keep it by layer, extension line 2, line type, and all that. Just keep them by layer. You can decide to choose any of the line thickness or line type. I like managing my drawings from my layers. So I always set them to be by layer. So whenever I edit the layer, I know it will affect all my dimensions. So now I can suppress extension line 1 and extension line 2 to make it like so. So you won't be seeing them. Oh no, I won't do that. Now you can extend your dimension lines beyond, extend beyond dimension lines. So now, what it's trying to tell you that, okay, this is your dimension line, this one here, this one running up to down, the dimension line. You can decide to extend this far above. And let me just show you an example. It's currently at 1.25. I'll make it to be 5. And you see how the changes will be. Of course, you see the changes there. If you've seen this, please type scene, use the chat box, type scene. Okay. Only one person saw it. Only one person? Okay. No problem. We'll continue. 1.25. Cheesy. So it was set to a default value of 1.25. That was the default value. And if you see 1.25, you see how small it is. It's not extended largely beyond the dimension line. So we can extend it beyond the dimension line to make it more visible and to show out really prominent. Let's steal the words from my host. To make it more prominent, I can extend this by 5 units, and then you see it there to be prominent and tall. So that's not what we want to do. We want to make it look nice. So we reduce it back to 1.25. And we can leave it at 1 in this case. Now, offset from origin. Offset from origin. this offset from origin will actually make me go back to what I said about baseline spacing. This baseline spacing is not talking about offset from origin. Offset from origin relates to the origin of your dimension line, which is the point you chose as the dimension lines. Why we were creating your dimension. I will have to close this to explain that. Let me close this here or say okay, set current and close. Remember, while I was creating the first dimension, I talked about some elements of the dimension. So I'll just create a line and I'll draw a dimension. I will have to send a dimension to it from this endpoint down to this endpoint. Now, this offset here is what I'm talking about. If you understand what I just said, please use the chat box, say yes. This offset is what I'm talking about when I'm saying offset from origin. So this is your origin, and the offset we have here is the offset from origin, okay? They do understand. So now we're continuing. I'm going to dim as well. Sorry, dim style. And go back to our style manager, modify. Modify. Wow. Okay. So now that is it. That's the offset from origin. So please, I will advise you to shut your camera. Thank you very much, sir. Okay, that's the offset from origin. So you can change this to any figure you want. In this case, I will say 0.8. I forgot what was there. 0.625, yeah. Okay. So in this case, 0.8, and you will see the changes now. It's not really that visible. I can make it 5 also. Okay, so now we can see it. Oh, in this case, I'll just make it 1. So the offset will be 1 from your origin. So if you want the dimension, this dimension line to be fixed, sorry, the extension lines rather, if you want them to be fixed, you can also do that by clicking on this and then inputting a fixed value for the length of this line. But I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to uncheck this box and go to the next tab that talks about symbols and arrows. Okay, for the symbols and arrows, you see we have arrowheads. You can decide to use arrowheads. You can decide to use architectural ticks. You can decide to use dots, as the case may be, as you can see. So if you select the first one, automatically the second one will follow suit. But you can also adjust the second one to be whatever you want. So I'm not going to talk much about this. The next one is the leader. If you want your leader to be different, of course, you know what a leader is. I explained that while editing the dimensions with grips. You can choose what you want your leader to look like. And your arrow size, you can decide your arrow size. Of course, this arrow size also represents dot size if you use dots as your arrowheads. So that is it. You can decide your arrow size. Center markings, you can say you don't want center markings to be there, and you can decide to impute the length of the center markings. So this is the set size of the center markings. And I'll talk about this on our next class, the center markings. We'll talk briefly about it before we go. Now, for dimension break, also, this should be discussed on our next class because I have a plan for this. And you have all this arc length symbol to place preceding dimension text, and then you can place it above dimension text. You can decide not to place it anywhere and leave it there. So there's no arc length symbol. So radius, jog dimension, you can decide to input a value for it. Linear jog dimension also, you can decide to input a value for that. We'll go to the next tab where it talks about text. Of course, I won't talk much about text here. It's just standard text editing, where you set your text color and all that, text height, according to what you want. But I will talk here, the fit tab, and I'll leave all these other things, talk about this overall scale. If you have a drawing, and let's say you have a drawing and you did your dimensions. I know people were asking this question, so I need to talk about this. You did your dimension, and your dimension was not showing because the value there is very small unless you zoom in. You just come to your dimension style manager and come to this fit tab, then come to this overall scale. Use overall scale, increase your overall scale accordingly. If I increase this to 5 and say okay, and come here, set current, and close this, you see what will happen to my dimensions. You see, it goes very large. Let me regenerate this. And you see, it has increased the whole dimensions, even above the objects I had there. So that is it about that fit and overall scale. So let me do this. I'll go back to this because I want it this way. So now I'll go back to dim style and of course modify. I don't know why this modify takes time to load. So for the fit tab, you can change this to fit in your overall scale. You can reduce it to 0.1 if you want to, and it will also give you that annotative. I don't want it annotative. 0.1, and then primary units talks about your units. So the way you want your units to be displayed. I know all of us here were in the session where I talked about units and limits. So this is just the unit for your dimension. And you set how you want your precisions to be and all that. Alternate unit also talks about your precision too. So for this, I have to end the class for today. Chompo, we will continue on that later on. This annotative stuff we're talking about here. If you're making the annotative, actually, you're canceling out the overall scale. That means whenever you're making your dimensions, you're going to put the way you want it to be displayed. That's just what it means generally. But we'll talk about it later on, not today. So we'll leave this out and then we'll say, okay, set current, and then close. So we have our dimensions because I set it to 1, and this is what I have. 0.1 rather is what I have. So you can see that it's a little bit not clustered. I'll just have to remove this because I don't need it here. Okay. So that will be all for today's class. Please, if you gain value from today's class, I like to get the feedback. So type value. Hello, hello, is anybody on the call? Okay, we have Chinagro, we have Namsu, we have Cheesy, and John Paul. And of course, we were the 4 finalists for today's session. And if you have any questions for me, please drop them on Slack because I will have to end this call now and hand over to the host. So if you have any question, you have my handle on Slack. You can just forward it to me on Slack. Thank you very much for attending today's session on CAD. The host, over to you, sir. Cheesy, thank you. Thank you, Namonso Asuko. Thank you, Chinabo. Hello, hosts. I think. Okay, we've come to the end of today's class. I would advise us to please leave the call while we end the meeting.